This area out here was claimed by Mission San Gabriel. And here's a great portrait of the mission that was painted in 1832 by Ferdinand Depp. And they were looking to establish a ranch outpost where they could raise cattle and find native peoples to convert to Catholicism and all of that. So they established an estancia. And the first estancia was out in present-day Loma Linda. This is an artist's conception of the Franciscans decided that, you got to go where the people are if you want to convert them. And there was a native encampment there called Wachama. And so that's where they decided to build this first estancia. One of the things that they wanted to do was also teach some form of agriculture, because this was not a kind of a crop raising in our sense that we have of raising crops. But of course they needed to have water. So if you are familiar with Loma Linda and are interested to know where the Wachama Rancheria was, just look for Mission Road. It's named that for a reason. They called it that because that's where this first mission outpost was. Back to the water thing though. So they realized that they needed to get a water supply to have this estancia be successful. So they dug what we in Redlands call the Sankey, S-A-N-K-E-Y is largely how locals pronounce it. Officially, it's called the Mill Creek Zanha, and there's a cutout of Mill Creek way on the other side of Mentone, and they dug in 18, 19, and 20 this irrigation ditch right into the ground, and it follows the contour of the topography all the way to this site along Mission Road. So the historic Mill Creek Zanha. And I'm going to show you, this is a map. This is from the early 1880s, but you can get a sense of the Sankey as it flowed, because all of this line that meanders from right to left is the Zanha. And the reason it looks like that is because trees grow where water flows, and that's why it's completely tree-lined at this period of time. Here's a close-up, and you can see this is then the second estancia site. Today we call it the Asistencia. Asistencia is kind of like a submission. Our historic site was never at that level, but some boosterism in the early part of the 20th century decided to lift it to that level. Second estancia site, that's where we call today's Asistencia. And it was located, of course, at present day Barton Road and Nevada Street. So by the middle of the 1830s, this site started in 1830, and then in about 1834, the Franciscans decided that maybe this wasn't such a great thing to be doing, because as it turns out, not all native peoples really wanted to be converted, and they made that feeling known. And about the same time is when Mexico was secularizing the properties that were owned by the Franciscan missions. And so the property was stripped from the missions. Well, 1857 comes along, and there is a threat of war in Utah between the Mormons and the United States. And Brigham Young recalls as many as will come back, which means there's a fire sale on property. And this guy, Ben Barton, who is from South Carolina, he's already living in San Bernardino. He decides that this is a great time to buy property because it's at fire sale prices, and he gets a pretty good chunk of the Rancho San Bernardino that is now West Redlands. All the way into central Redlands, because he was using for sheep pastures and things like that. And in 1867, he built a house right next to the ruins of the estancia. The house is still standing. It's the oldest brick structure in this part of the valley. Here you can see what little was left of the estancia buildings, which were never really completed by 1834 when it was abandoned. And you can see the house. And of course, the house is still standing right there at Nevada Street. The second Empire look that you see here was created in the early 1880s. I love the cupola tower on top. It also meant that the ruins out there were interesting places for people to discover and come out and see things.